I'm 27-year-old office worker John. When I graduated from college, I made the decision to start working for a printing company. The only reason I joined the company was because they were the first to give me a job, not because I had any aspirations or ambitions for the future. Using the camera I've always liked, I launched a side business while working throughout the day at the printing company. I can now make some money from the photography I first learned on my own. I frequently struggle with deciding whether to continue working at the steady job or go it alone as a photographer. I really am at a loss these days. The majority of my employment at the printing company consists of odd jobs. My employer has chastised me for appearing unmotivated, and it happens a lot. I've always stood out in gatherings, so I knew I stood out at work. This can be explained by the fact that I've always been something of a mistrustful person. Of course, that wasn't who I was from the beginning. My mistrust of people stems from trauma experienced as a child. In our community, my dad had established his own company and was in charge of a reputable trading organization. He was brave, kind, and intelligent. My dad served as a role model for me. I always imagined that as I grew up, I would grow up to be like my dad and expand his business. In that regard, I may have been precocious. However, this dream vanished in an instant. My father died unexpectedly. He passed out at work, and he was unconscious when he arrived at the hospital. He died without ever coming to consciousness. At the age of 10, I believe. Following my dad's passing, my mother turned into a zombie. She could not deal with reality and was continuously crying. I believe I gritted my teeth while standing next to her. Then, my uncle took over my dad's company by taking advantage of my mom's sorrow. It appeared to occur in an instant. It's likely that he has been waiting for an opportunity to take over the company all along. By using kind words to my mother, he was able to gain favor and effectively seize control of the business. My mom and I felt like the ladder had been ripped out from under us after that. Yes, my father had left an inheritance. My mother must have gotten a sizable payout from the insurance. My mother had given up on the takeover of the business from the beginning. "Your father left us with more than just the company," she stated to me. However, I was unable to accept it, and as a result, I developed a strong mistrust of others and was shunned in both elementary and middle school. During my time in high school, I believe I did a respectable job of getting by and, to some extent, fitting in. However, I believe that I was genuinely an outcast in my middle school class during my adolescent years. I don't think my classmates were bullying me or anything. They just didn't know how to handle me. My middle school peers saw me like a heretic, looking at me and my mistrust of humanity. That wasn't how things started out. Everyone seemed to want to get along, just like other middle school students. Only I was unable to accept it. I persisted in erecting barriers in between myself and my peers. They had to have thought I was letting them down. I wasn't going to try to fit in with the class. They appear to have made the decision to delete my existence after realizing this. I started to lose the attention of the entire class. This must have been spotted by the teacher, who must have chosen to ignore it. I mistrusted people, but I still wanted friends. I was confused and unsure of how to handle myself. I was irritated with my awkward self. There was a girl in this class who, like myself, was out of the ordinary. Miranda White was her name. In the classroom, Miranda was also handled like an inanimate object. It's not like she was a shy person. She had a strong sense of self and would voice her differences in words if they were different. Her straight stance was what initially drew my attention. It was lovely and organic rather than forced. I believe she had a strong core. Her complexion was a creamy white, and her long, thick lashes concealed her downcast light brown eyes. Her face was proportionate, yet it was devoid of joy. I enjoyed looking over her slightly depressing profile. Compared to the other students in the class, she exuded maturity. Miranda's everyday existence among her peers was one that set her circumstances apart from mine by a small amount. There was nobody reflecting in her eyes. I genuinely respected her for her pride, even if she avoided interacting with others. I believe that I was putting onto her my idealized version of myself. I never questioned her about why she continued to act in this way. Miranda and I may not have spoken to each other very often, if at all, but I will always remember her. Since our high schools are different, my memory of Miranda is still that of a middle schooler. She is still very much in my memory. Gradually, my photography started to be acknowledged. Then I got a really significant job. The photographer I was working as an apprentice to made the proposition. It was my responsibility to accompany someone on a spiritual journey and take pictures of the experience as it was being conducted in the past. When I first heard the term spiritual journey, I was unsure of its meaning. I had an ill-defined vision of a mysterious figure. Since I had no choice but to accept the offer from the person I was apprenticing under, I did as I was told. In the library, I sought up spiritual journey right away. It combined aspects of Buddhism with old Japanese mountain worship. Taoism appears to include elements as well, going into seclusion into the mountains, going through rigorous training, and becoming enlightened. It is a distinct faith and religion of Japan. I find myself drawing parallels between the practitioner's appearance and mythical figures. For me to capture the training in the rough mountains would also need a significant amount of physical strength. I got thrilled about the spiritual practice as I did more investigation. I'm really curious, so I use my camera to document a world I don't yet know about. I couldn't help but be excited about it. I sent a vacation request to my employer, a printing company. I didn't face any backlash for taking a lengthy vacation because the company provided excellent employee perks. I so found myself spending time with various mountain practitioners in the mountains, the object of faith. To my relief, they were all purely nice people, not at all like the scary people I had imagined them to be. I instructed them to act as though I wasn't there so I could capture them in their natural states, and they told me about the taboos throughout their training. That seemed like a more natural manner for me to take pictures of them. It seems that the phrase mountain hermit refers to someone who trains by lying down in the mountains. The long-standing practice of nature worship in Japan has had a significant influence on it. Some of them move at such an incredible pace through places where there are no roads, giving me the impression that I have come upon a real mythical monster. Some even have wives and kids, which is surprising. When I learned that they continue to live regular lives while training on different spiritual mountains across Japan, I was genuinely shocked. They leave the city's bustle behind, enter the spiritual highlands, do homage to the natural world, and lie down there. After taking in the mountain's spiritual essence, they head back to the city. A few others mentioned how leading a life that is so different from their regular routine enables them to face their own issues. I noticed that I was getting more invested in this work than I had anticipated. At first, I was merely interested in taking cool pictures, but after hearing different accounts, I made the decision to document them accurately. They were faster and more energetic than any people I had ever seen in the city as they raced over the mountains. I clutched tenaciously and snapped furiously at my camera. The time spent filming appeared to go by quickly. When it was all over, I was in disbelief. All that was left was the knowledge that my small-mindedness had limited my perspective and abilities. It's okay, I feel like I should tell my former self, who had walled himself off in a mistrustful shell. Step right out. From the bottom of my heart, I felt that way. It seemed like everything had changed during the days I spent with the mountain hermits, and I believe that was a turning point in my life. I began intentionally performing the things I had been avoiding as evidence. I started to say yes to requests to go out drinking with coworkers I never went out with or to gatherings my employer threw. At work, I started to speak up more and was able to discuss things with my coworkers. The weight of the constraints I had put on myself astounded me. As I opened my heart, I was even startled to feel as though I could see farther out. And that's me, prepared to take on a fresh task right now. Normally, I would toss it in the garbage, but this time, it was an invitation to a reunion of middle school classmates. I haven't been able to attend the 2 reunions that have occurred thus far. I didn't even say anything. I must have been an eyesore to my classmates in middle school. Though I doubt anyone would want to see me, I plucked up the guts to record my attendance this time. My heart is full with expectation that by going to the reunion I've always avoided, I'll get to explore a whole new universe. There's also a glimmer of hope. I want to see Miranda White again, the girl I admired so much in the past. Up until the reunion day, I was filled with excitement and a little sense of expectancy. When I announced my name at the reception on the day of the reunion, the girl in charge of registration gave me a startled look twice. Clearly, she didn't think I would be there. She was probably one of the girls that looked up to Samantha Smith, our class's queen bee. Our middle school class was clearly divided into roles. Samantha Smith was at the top. She was attractive, with a slightly aged face, but I couldn't handle her forceful demeanor. Samantha was incredible because she knew how beautiful she was and knew how to use it to her advantage. With it, she ran the entire class. It sickens me to think about how she took pleasure in manipulating her peers. Samantha is likely to be at the location as well. She's also been a negative experience for me. When we passed each other at the classroom door, our shoulders most likely touched slightly because she was in a terrible mood. It wasn't intentional, of course. She fussed over it a much. Every girl in the class took Samantha's side. They seemed to be competing to see who could help her out first. They feared that if they moved too slowly, Samantha might turn her attention toward them. Samantha frightened everyone. Ultimately, the girls got me out of the classroom and made me spend the rest of the day in the nurse's office. Looking back on it today, it's still a bad recollection. Although I don't feel like meeting that individual right now, I'll just make the same mistake again if I flee now. I inhaled deeply before going inside the location. Nearly everybody had assembled at the reunion site, which was set up as a standing cocktail party. I recognized a couple people at a glance that I just dimly recognized. Unconsciously, I searched for Miranda White's figure. This is probably not the kind of setting where she would reveal her face. Miranda was nowhere to be found at the location, as I had anticipated. As I was looking around the venue, a voice said to me, I can't believe it. You really showed up." It was my classmate Phil Johnson. He was one of the ones who had led the charge in ignoring me since he was annoyed with me. Is it possible that when Phil gets older, he will start talking to people? I said in an average voice, "Phil, you still have the look from our middle school days." I was not going to fall for Phil's petty bait. Phil kept bugging me, obviously not happy with my demeanor. "You've developed the ability to respond in such a lifeless manner while steaming maturity. At work, though, you're presumably still an outsider, right? You know, people who are similar to you are considered social misfits." Is he a tad tipsy? Phil had a crimson face. As Phil had said, "That's true. I'm kind of an outsider," I agreed. It wasn't false. Why is it the case? Making an effort to behave like an adult. It seemed that my casual dismissal of his sarcasm irritated him. Phil's voice became more and more audible. "What's going on?" People started to huddle up around Phil and myself gradually. After all, I've become older. I take it you have too, Phil. You can't stay in middle school forever, I remarked. My remarks made Phil's face flush. It's likely that he finally recognized how embarrassing his actions were. "John, you realize how much you've changed since turning mature. You were always attractive. Aren't you well liked these days?" Abruptly, the crowd parted, and Samantha Smith emerged through the opening. Nothing had changed from middle school. The positive attitude toward me was the only thing that was different. Both back then and now, nothing had changed. "In my entire life, I have never been popular," I replied with a sour smile. Samantha widened her eyes. They were eyes, attempting to find the truth in my words. Samantha has this probing, scrutinizing look in her eyes that I have always detested. I remembered, disgusted, how Samantha's remarks following these assessments were directly related to my grade in the class. That's something, though. John, please come over here. There is much for us to catch up on. Right now, I was supposed to be with Samantha, the queen bee. Phil's furious eyes blazed at me. Everyone in the class knew that Phil had affections for Samantha from the beginning. Samantha was the butt of jokes, and I took her away, and I thought Phil must be boiling with wrath. Samantha had been playing with Phil's heart all along, so she knew how he felt. Oh, and during middle school, you were dating Miranda, correct? I had the pleasure of seeing you during graduation. You would be better off with damaged goods like Miranda. Samantha doesn't fit you. My eyes automatically went to Phil's suggestive remarks. Overreacting was a mistake. I turned and whistled, and Phil gave me a look. What did you see, huh? Did you date Miranda? Samantha looked astonished as she turned to face Phil. Phil struck up a triumphant conversation. My intention was to confess to Miranda on the day of graduation. Miranda was unremarkable even on her graduation day, but long after the ceremony was over, she remained at the window and gazed at the school gate. It was my only opportunity as we were scheduled to attend different high schools. Miranda, that was my name. Miranda turned around gradually. I think she noticed that I was staring at her. A scar the shape of a cord ran straight down her pale skin, from her left eye to her collarbone. I had heard rumors from someone that it was a big accident wound. Phil referred to Miranda as damaged goods because of this scar. You know, after we graduate, I stumbled over my words, finding it difficult to speak. It was hard to express what I had been planning since the previous evening when I looked into her direct eyes. All I wanted to do was acquire her number. I started to get anxious. Then Miranda gave a small smile. Don't be nervous around me, you weirdo, she added with a somewhat amused yet dignified tone. I believe that Miranda's statements to me marked the beginning of our actual conversation. Are we going to separate high schools? Today is the last day. Miranda whispered something deeply emotional, and I had no idea what to respond to her. Her body began to tremble as if the wind were carrying it. She leaped next to me with remarkable quickness and stood in my arms. She extended herself upward, pressing my shoulders with both hands. My cheek was kissed by her warm breath. Something gentle stroked my cheek the next moment. Her hands that had been on my shoulders vanished in a second, along with the sensation. I dodged it as soon as I recognized it was Miranda's lips, embarrassed as hell. What? I sat down on the area by accident, buckling at the knees. Miranda laughed as she watched me. Her face was also a little red. I had intended to make my initial impression. John, you won't forget me now, will you? She told me this, looking triumphant, and then she was gone like the wind from the room. Just like in a dream, I was left on my own. I put a hand to my cheek and noticed that it was a little heated. Miranda and I kept this a secret from one another. At the time, I was unaware that someone had been prying into our privacy. I didn't want someone to tarnish my recollections, even if it seemed inevitable that someone had seen us. I glared at Phil now. Phil took a satisfied look at my altered complexion. Just as he was about to proudly divulge my secret to Miranda, the front door opened and a voice yelled out, "John." Immediately, everyone's gaze was fixed on the entryway. "John, glad to find you." Like before, Miranda ran to me like the wind as soon as she saw me. My heart pounded louder with this unexpected reunion. "I'm grateful, John. I wanted to let you know that's simple." Miranda bowed very low in front of me, ignoring the peers gathered around. "May I ask what you mean?" "What?" Like I did on graduation day, I unintentionally replied. Where had the adult me gone from just now? That's how astonished I felt. Miranda gave a book to me. It was the photo album I made, themed on artistic mountain practices, kind of like a spiritual retreat. An album of pictures that belonged just to the people involved and not in stores yet. Huh. How do you have this? My mind was racing since there were so many things I didn't grasp. Samantha yelled, "This is the photo album taken by Noah, isn't it?" as she peered over Miranda's shoulder at the album. He shoots subjects other than models. I was ignorant of this. A group of girls gathered after Samantha's remarks. They all had a look at Noah's pictures. I became ashamed of myself for being there. I go by Noah while I work as a photographer. Nobody else is aware of this other identity. This is indeed my brother. I had John take these for me. Upon perusing this photo book, I at last comprehended my father and sibling. John was the one who ended the spell that was enclosing me. Miranda held up the photo album like it was something special. Wait, Noah is John. A whisper went through the group at Samantha's statements. There's a little explanation behind this. After all, Noah's models are all superstars. This is the superstition that I am connected to. Yes, after I shoot any unknown model, it takes off. Of course, their own diligence plays a role, but having a picture taken by me is now seen as a shortcut to achievement. Are these hermits in the mountains your brothers? Disregarding Samantha's message, I inquired Miranda. With a wise nod, Miranda informed me. The hermits are the half-brothers of Miranda. She claimed that she and her father are not related by blood. The fragile mother of her daughter remarried as a second wife and died soon after. After her mother passed away, Miranda was left grieving at home, while her brothers and father left to live as monastics. After being left alone at home, Miranda progressively hardened her heart. At school, things were the same. She kept herself to herself, not wanting to disappoint other people. She most likely avoided getting injured because she didn't expect anything from anyone. She would have liked to accompany them, but many of the sacred mountains are inaccessible to women. What on earth were they doing, leaving her behind? Miranda was wary of everything. She was constantly against her father and brothers because she didn't think they needed to do anything so significant to leave her feeling so alone. I noticed the candid picture he took with you when my brothers gave me this photo book. John, I recognized you immediately away. Miranda finally comprehended them when she saw the sincere pictures I had taken of her brothers. Thank you for showing me the truth. As she spoke, she met my eyes directly. The scars on her face were visible even with makeup on. Samantha moved her body to be in the way of Miranda and me just as I turned to talk to her. John, please take a photo of me. I'm modeling, you know that. With a charming smile, Samantha continued, as a favor to a classmate. Her attitude of being a queen had disappeared. She works as a model, as far as I know. She had a poor reputation among makeup artists. I don't shoot anything ugly, sorry. My actual feelings were expressed right away, and Samantha's cheeks brightened red. She must never have experienced such public humiliation before. I could hear the girls surrounding us laughing. Right now, the only one I want to photograph in this venue is Miranda in front of me. Raising her hand in a fit of wrath, Samantha appeared to pull back just in time. She didn't seem to want to draw attention to herself anymore. She pivoted and departed from the location. As Phil pursued her, I observed. Miranda grinned and replied, I don't want to be photographed, but show me what you'll shoot first. After all, my mark is still on your cheek, isn't it, John? Miranda muttered something, and I unintentionally stroked my cheek. Just like graduation day, it was starting to get a little hot. I would eventually find myself in a natural situation, sitting quietly on my knees in the middle, surrounded by Miranda's father and siblings. I was encircled by the powerful hermits. They were asking questions about me. Can you bring happiness to our daughter, our sister? The level of intensity had surpassed that of their training sessions. I was speaking from the heart. I'll bring her joy. I begged, please give her to me, with unwavering resolve. As I spoke, appraising voices could be heard. Well stated. I felt relieved that I had apparently been welcomed in some way. But hold on. No, really. Miranda snapped to attention. Everybody in the room turned to stare at her, confused. What was the outcome of this 1-hour conversation? Just give it 1 more minute. I would like to spend a little more time with this family. Miranda suddenly understood how much her family loved her when she looked around at the males. I want to be my father's daughter and my brother's sister for a little while longer. Is that incorrect? Her eyes were like small dogs as she begged for just a little bit longer. Refusing was out of the question. You're not attainable. With a sardonic smile, I replied, when you're satisfied, come join my family. The next instant, I found myself flying through the air, approaching a marriage proposal, and finding myself lifted high into the air by the men in the low-ceilinged living room. However, as I saw the men's contented tears stream down their faces, I realized that my decision wasn't at all incorrect. And since Miranda's mark is on my cheek, it won't matter how long it takes. How was that to your liking? Supporting our production will be greatly aided by channel subscriptions. Until the next video, see ya.